Have you ever wondered what the early years of Jesus' life were like? What mysteries surround the childhood of the one who, for Christians, is the savior of the world? The story of Jesus' childhood was something barely explored by the canonical Gospels, but an apocryphal text, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, offers a unique and miracle-filled view of this phase of Christ's life. In this video, we will delve into the fascinating stories of a child Jesus performing miracles and demonstrating divine wisdom. In a world where the supernatural mixes with the everyday, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas reveals an unprecedented perspective, with accounts that make us question the true nature of Christ. Did Jesus, from his childhood, already demonstrate divine powers? And how did these stories influence the view of the divine Christ in the early Christian communities? Get ready to explore the mysteries and miracles of Jesus' childhood that, to this day, fuel debates and questions. But first, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to always receive the best biblical content. Let's go. The childhood and youth of Jesus have always been a theme shrouded in mystery and speculation. The Bible, in its canonical Gospels, offers limited information about this phase of Jesus' life, and most of the accounts we know about his childhood come from apocryphal sources, such as the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. This book, which circulated widely in antiquity and the Middle Ages, describes episodes from Jesus' youth that depart from the traditional view of the figure of Christ. Let's explore these stories and reflect on what they can teach us about the figure of Jesus and his significance for humanity. In the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, the mentions of Jesus' childhood are brief. Matthew describes the birth of Jesus, the visit of the Magi, and the flight to Egypt, while Luke recounts the presentation of Jesus in the temple and the story of the visit to the temple at the age of 12, where Jesus impresses the doctors of the law with his wisdom. After these episodes, the Gospels move on to Jesus' adult life, with little to say about his childhood. This biblical void led many Christians and scholars of the time to seek answers in other sources. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas, for example, presents a much more detailed and even mystical version of Jesus' early years. It describes miracles, episodes of interaction with other children, and even Jesus' education. This apocryphal text, probably written between the 2nd and 3rd centuries, portrays Jesus as a child prodigy, with abilities and powers beyond human comprehension. The image it constructs of Jesus is that of a child capable of performing extraordinary feats, but also with a strong temperament and a somewhat difficult personality. One of the best-known episodes of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is the episode of the clay sparrows. At the age of 5, Jesus is depicted playing near a stream where he molds 12 birds from clay. When a man complains that he was profaning the Sabbath, Jesus brings the sparrows to life, and they fly away. This episode, which also appears in the Quran, is not just a simple miracle but carries deeper meanings. Jesus' act of bringing the birds to life can be interpreted as a reflection of his authority over creation and a symbol of his divine mission. Moreover, the allegory of the Sabbath and the reaction of the other men reflect the critique that Jesus would later make against human laws that oppose the true understanding of God. Other stories narrate episodes of confrontations with other children and even with teachers. In one of these stories, Jesus, becoming irritated with a boy who bumped into him, causes the boy to die instantly. Although the violence may seem strange for the figure of Jesus, it can be understood in the context of the ancient view of God as an untouchable and terrible presence that demanded absolute respect. A striking characteristic of these stories is Jesus' impressive intelligence from childhood. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas narrates that when Jesus is taken to a teacher to learn, he ends up teaching the master, revealing the profound meaning of the Greek letters, which embarrasses the teacher. On another occasion, when Joseph, his father, faces difficulties in his carpentry work, Jesus finds an ingenious solution to correct a measurement error. These episodes indicate that, from childhood, Jesus possessed a deep understanding of human and divine matters, reflecting his nature as the Son of God. The portrait of Jesus in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas often contradicts the common view of a meek and welcoming Jesus. He does not hesitate to use his powers punitively, as in the case of the boy he caused to die for accidentally bumping into him. This image may cause discomfort, but it should be understood in the light of the cultural and theological context of the time. The idea that a divine being, even in the form of a child, possessed fearsome powers was not uncommon in the religious imagination of the ancient Semitic peoples. The story of Uzzah, who was struck down for touching the Ark of the Covenant, exemplifies this conception of a deity whose power was absolute and did not tolerate disrespect. This representation of Jesus in childhood, although challenging to modern thought, can be seen as a means of affirming his divine authority from the earliest moments of his life. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas suggests that Jesus, from a young age, was not just any child, but an unusual being, with absolute power over life and death, divine knowledge, to teach and heal. The harshness of his personality can be understood as a way of establishing his divine authority, following a theological line that saw the holiness and divinity of God as something unattainable and often severe. The story of Jesus during childhood is surrounded by a multiplicity of interpretations and accounts. While the canonical Gospels offer a more restrained account, the apocryphal texts expand this narrative, bringing to light a miraculous, intelligent, and, at times, implacable Jesus. Although these stories are not part of the certain truth of the biblical context, they reflect a popular view of Jesus' character and how he was idealized from childhood. Another episode brings to light Jesus' relationship with his parents. A reprimand from Joseph to Jesus is followed by a surprising reaction from Jesus, who, instead of submitting to his father's authority submissively, questions his action and reverses the criticism, making Joseph realize the depth of his power and wisdom. This type of narrative, although enigmatic, highlights the contrast between Jesus' humanity and his divinity, suggesting that he was not limited by the familial or social norms that governed other children. In the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is portrayed as a youth with extraordinary abilities, performing miraculous feats in various everyday situations. For example, he is able to heal wounds instantly, as in the case of his brother James bitten by a viper. In another moment, Jesus resurrects a boy who had fallen from a roof, demonstrating not only dominion over life and death, but also an unusual supernatural force in a child. These stories place Jesus in a role of absolute authority and power, something that would later be fully revealed in the canonical Gospels. However, Jesus' actions in childhood go beyond miracles, extending to his innate wisdom and the way he interacts with others. Another aspect that stands out in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is Jesus' exceptional intelligence. In various episodes, Jesus teaches adults, including his teachers, and his teachings about the profound meaning of seemingly simple things, such as the letters of the alphabet, are portrayed as deep revelations. One of his masters, unable to comprehend Jesus' level of knowledge, is so impressed that he suggests that the young man is not of this world, but a celestial figure. This type of portrait of young Jesus reveals his authority not only in terms of divine power, but also in relation to the understanding of the laws and mysteries that govern the universe, something that would later be corroborated in his ministry. However, this wisdom and power also generate conflict. At one point, a teacher is unable to deal with Jesus' superiority, and, in his frustration, slaps him. Jesus' response is immediate and forceful. He curses the teacher, causing him to fall to the ground, but later resurrects the master, also showing the absolute control he had over human life and suffering. The representation of Jesus as such a powerful and apparently temperamental child can be disconcerting to the modern reader. The idea of a child with the ability to kill and resurrect out of mere displeasure seems to clash with the gentle and loving figure we commonly associate with Jesus. However, this representation is not unique to the Gospel of Thomas. Accounts of divine figures in the Old Testament, such as the episode of Uzzah trying to touch the Ark of the Covenant, show a God whose holiness and power are untouchable, and any disrespect is punished immediately and fatally. Although the Infancy Gospel of Thomas was never included in the Christian canon, It exerted considerable influence on the early generations of Christians, reflecting the efforts of the Christian community to fill gaps about Jesus' life that the canonical Gospels did not address. These apocryphal texts were a way to expand the narrative of Christ, offering a more detailed and, at times, more mystical understanding of his life before his public ministry. The apocryphal texts also served as a tool for reflecting on theological and Christological questions, especially about the nature of Jesus as truly God and truly man. The way he is portrayed performing miracles and demonstrating great wisdom from his childhood can be seen as an attempt to affirm the divinity of Christ from the beginning, not only in his adult life, but also from his childhood. This point of view may have been important for the early communities that faced Christological debates about the true nature of Jesus and how he related to God the Father. The impact of this gospel can also be seen in medieval Christian art and the development of other stories about Jesus' childhood. In some traditions of religious art, the figure of an infant or child Jesus with supernatural powers appears more prominently, reinforcing the idea that from his birth he possessed exceptional divine characteristics. The popular Christian tradition over the centuries was also influenced by non-canonical accounts, such as those found in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. These texts were used to elaborate a view of Christ that was more accessible and understandable to the faithful, especially during the Middle Ages, when the lives of the saints and miraculous stories were part of Christian folklore. In many regions, for example, the figure of the child Jesus was celebrated with an image of unusual power, something that reflects the stories of the Gospel of Thomas, in which Jesus, still a child, exhibits supernatural powers. This was depicted in numerous works of art, which emphasized the majesty of Christ from childhood, and in the tradition of festivals dedicated to him, which underscored his spiritual presence and strength from the early years of life. These elements contributed to the development of a devotion to the child Jesus, which had a significant influence, particularly in the liturgical celebrations of the Feast of the Holy Childhood of Jesus. The idea that Christ was already a sacred figure, full of power, even as a child, may have been a way to connect the faithful to his humanity and at the same time to his divinity, reminding them that, although he was a child like any other, he was, at the same time, the Savior of the world. In today's world, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas can be seen as an invitation to rethink the complex interaction between the humanity and divinity of Jesus. It challenges the conventional view of a perfectly normal Jesus in childhood, suggesting that from the beginning, Christ was an exceptional and mysterious figure. This approach can also inspire reflection on how divine power and wisdom are manifested in the most fragile human figures, such as a child, and how the connection between the two aspects, the human and the divine, is central to Christian theology. And so, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas takes us on a fascinating journey through the mystery of Jesus' childhood, revealing aspects that are often forgotten or ignored by traditional narratives. This apocryphal text, filled with miracles and profound teachings, provides us with a new perspective on the young Messiah and his divine connection. Although it was not included in the biblical canon, it continues to invite us to reflect and question the various interpretations of his life and mission. If you are intrigued by this fascinating view of Jesus' childhood, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your opinion in the comments below, remembering that everything said here is not an absolute truth, but is based on ancient texts of prophets. If you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it. Watch our other videos to learn everything about Jesus, and see you next time.